Brandon had spent years building his ranch into the place he called home. Every fence, barn, and tree carried memories that mattered to him. He never imagined that leaving town for 7 days would change everything. Because while Brandon was gone, the Pinecrest HOA decided his property was theirs to destroy. Before leaving town, Brandon double-checked the locks and security cameras. He had 1 week of business meetings scheduled several hours away. The ranch would be empty, but everything was secured and legally documented. Brandon believed he had nothing to worry about. Brandon drove away that morning without knowing what was waiting for him. His ranch disappeared behind him as the road stretched toward town. Meanwhile, someone at the Pinecrest HOA office was already making plans. Plans that would turn his peaceful ranch into a disaster zone. Amanda Miller had always believed Brandon's ranch was an eyesore beside the community. She wanted the land cleared for a future development project, but Brandon had repeatedly refused every offer they made. So Amanda decided to stop asking. By the second day, heavy equipment arrived at Brandon's property. The contractors claimed they had authorization from the Pinecrest HOA. Nobody stopped to verify who actually owned the land, and Amanda personally ordered them to begin demolition. The first fence came down before anyone questioned the paperwork. Then the bulldozers moved deeper onto Brandon's property. Amanda watched his years of work disappear beneath heavy machinery. She believed Brandon would have no choice but to accept defeat. Then the crew reached Brandon's house. They tore through the porch, walls, and roof with shocking speed. By sunset, the home Brandon had built was reduced to rubble, and nobody had even called him. For 7 days, Brandon had no idea what was happening back home. The ranch that once stood proudly now looked like a disaster zone. Amanda thought the destruction would make the land easier to control. Instead, she had created the biggest legal mistake of her life. On the 7th evening, Brandon finally received an urgent phone call. The caller told him something had happened at his ranch. Brandon immediately opened the security footage sent to his phone. What he saw made him freeze. Brandon watched his house disappear piece by piece on the screen. He watched Amanda standing there as if she owned the place. His hands tightened around the edge of the table. Then he quietly said, "They just made a very expensive mistake." Brandon pulled out the original deed to his ranch. He checked the property survey and every recorded boundary document. Everything clearly showed that the Pinecrest HOA had no ownership rights over his land. Brandon knew exactly what he needed to do next. Before sunrise, Brandon was already driving home. He barely stopped except to fuel the truck and make phone calls. By the time he reached his county, his attorney was already waiting. But Brandon wanted to see the destruction with his own eyes. Brandon stepped out of his truck and stared silently at the ruins. The house was gone. The fence was destroyed and the yard was torn apart. For a moment, he simply stood there, remembering everything that had been lost. Then he noticed something that changed the entire case. A buried survey marker proved the demolition had crossed far beyond the Pinecrest HOA boundary. Brandon's attorney photographed every inch of it. The evidence showed the bulldozers had destroyed private property without permission, and that meant Amanda had a serious problem. Amanda arrived expecting Brandon to be furious but powerless. Instead, Brandon calmly held up the original deed. He told her every square foot of the destroyed property belonged to him. Amanda's confident expression suddenly disappeared. The sheriff examined the deed and compared it with the official county survey. The boundaries were unmistakable. The bulldozers had demolished Brandon's house without legal authority. Now the sheriff had to decide what happened next. Amanda tried claiming the Pinecrest HOA had authorized the demolition. The sheriff asked her one simple question. "Where's the court order?" Amanda had no answer. That silence changed the entire atmosphere. Amanda finally realized the Pinecrest HOA paperwork could not protect her. The contractors had acted on instructions that were never legally valid. Brandon's attorney immediately filed an emergency lawsuit, and the damages were about to become enormous. Days later, both sides faced Judge Beatrice Vance in court. Amanda expected the case to become another minor property dispute, but Brandon's attorney presented video evidence, deeds, surveys, invoices, and photographs. The courtroom became completely silent. The judge carefully reviewed every document placed before her. The evidence showed the Pinecrest HOA had no authority over Brandon's ranch. The demolition had been deliberate, extensive, and completely unauthorized. Then the judge announced that the court would calculate the full damages. Subscribe to HO Drama Neighbor for more.